The Leather Archives and Museum was set up to collect, preserve, conserve, and in my opinion, most importantly, provide access to leather, fetish, kink, BDSM, history, and culture. That's a great question and a little tough to answer because there's no commonly accepted definition for any of those words. And so at the Leather Archives, we use the word leather as an umbrella term to kind of encompass all of those different types of sexualities because everybody defines each of them a little bit different. Evidence of kind of a community or people coming together in at least a somewhat organized way here in the United States really go back to the 1920s and 1930s when we started to see publications that featured advertisements for corsets or for high-heeled boots. And these advertisements became a way for people to start corresponding with each other and communicating with each other. Interestingly enough, when the Leather Archives and Museum was incorporated in 1991, it was originally incorporated as the National Gay and Lesbian Archives. Very, very quickly into the institution's life, it was clear that there were already other lesbian and gay archives popping up across the country, and so that wasn't the right mission for this institution. And so the focus and the mission was quickly changed to leather, fetish, and kink history without regards to gender or sexual orientation. It was important from the beginning for the Leather Archives to be a grassroots and an independent institution, and so they didn't want to tie it to another museum or to an academic institution, and so the Leather Archives has always been a grassroots organization primarily run by and operated by leather and kink people to make sure that the collections were processed in the right way and to make sure that people's history was up on the wall and visible. So the collections of the Leather Archives and Museum were built around consensual sexual activities. And so many of the papers and organizational records and books and magazines that you find in a collection, like the LA&M, go to great lengths to talk about the differences between violence and consensual S&M activity, and how the collection here really documents the lengths that people have went to organize to make sure that they're sharing information about how to do S&M activity safely, how to have sex in a way that's safer. If we use the collections here to look back at the early 1980s, when there was a lot of misinformation about AIDS and how it was being spread, the leather community really stepped up. And when I say leather community, I mean people of all genders and sexual orientations came together and created ways to engage in this type of sex safely. And so the Leather Archives and Museum really serves as a place to document and to dispel some of those myths about what is consensual and what's not, and what is safer and what is less safe. The Leather Archives, one of my favorite things about it is that's really kind of three institutions rolled into one. There's a museum collection with exhibits, there's a library, which we're sitting in right here today, and there's also an archives. And we strive to make all of these collections work with each other, although they're used a little bit differently. Generally, the museum exhibits are for people that just want to come in and learn a little bit about their history, walk around, have curated exhibits put together for them that show and provide in a visual way some of the history and art associated with leather and kink. The library is used a little bit differently. People who want to kind of do their own digging and go through maybe some of the books or some of the magazines Anyone 18 and over can come in anytime the library is open and peruse and just kind of browse for themselves. In fact, many times we have people who come in to see the museum, and they'll go through and do a 45-minute museum tour, but then they'll end up coming into the library after the tour and sitting and just reading for a couple of hours. Archives in general are unpublished papers and records. So we think about things like meeting minutes, or club rosters, or somebody's email, or somebody's letters and correspondence that they wrote. Generally those are used by either one of two categories of people. Academic people who are doing scholarly research, studying about leather and S&M, or it's also used by leather folk who maybe are interested in their own club's history, and we happen to have the records of their club here, and so they may come in and kind of look through and do a little bit of their own digging into the archives of their own club. There's lots of ways that people can get involved with the leather archives. We have a very, very, very small paid staff here, and so we absolutely rely on people who can give a couple hours a week or 4 or 5 hours every other week to come in and work with the collections, help us answer research questions, help with new donations, and things like that. People outside of Chicago can absolutely get involved with their leather history, by letting people know that there is a place in Chicago where leather and fetish and kink history is stored, and so people who have large collections, the Leather Archives and Museum is an option for them to save that history. We also, at the Leather Archives, have an oral history project where we provide educational resources to people to teach them how to do oral histories. And so if there's somebody in your community that's been around for a long time and has some great stories to tell, it's really pretty easy to sit down with them with a digital recording device, ask a few questions to kind of get them started talking, and just record their story. Sexuality history especially is sometimes hard to find evidence of. We don't have cameras generally or recording devices walking around public sex spaces or inside people's bedrooms, and so a lot of what we do is really only recorded in our heads and in our hearts. And so oral histories are a great way for people in the future to provide access to some of what we're doing today. While the Leather Archives and Museum is located in Chicago, and we love it when people come and visit us here, we certainly recognize that not everyone can come to Chicago. And so the organization was really built to get our history outside of the building as much as we can. We do have a few curated traveling exhibits that go to leather and S&M events around the country, but we also put a very strong emphasis on digitizing our collections. And so a lot of what we have here at the Leather Archives goes online, either through exhibits that are available on our website at leatherarchives.org, or we also strive to put as much as we can on social media. And so we share images and records and documents through Facebook or Tumblr, or video clips through YouTube. And so we really strive to get our history outside of Chicago as much as we can.